The use of metal to create sculptural objects dates back to prehistoric times. The ancient Mesopotamians were one of the first civilizations to use bronze to create sculptures by pouring molten metal into molds, a process known as the casting method. In ancient Egypt, life-sized reproductions of pharaohs and fantastic gods and goddesses were created in precious metals such as gold as well as bronze. During the Greek and Roman era, life-sized figures with idealized proportions were cast in bronze using the lost wax method. In China, intricately crafted metal statues of people, animals, and vessels have been found dating back to the Zhou dynasty, approximately 3,000 years ago. Artists in Renaissance Europe were masters of metal casting. During the Industrial Revolution, metal casting became an increasingly important art technique because of the establishment of foundries throughout Europe and the United States. Today, sculptors use techniques similar to those used thousands of years ago. Materials such as bronze, iron, gold, and copper can be melted, poured, fused, hammered, or riveted to create sturdy, long-lasting works of art. A common method of creating sculpture using metal is called casting. This is an additive process because the artist adds material to make the sculpture. The process begins with the creation of a model or form made from a soft material such as wax, foam, clay, or wood. A structure is built around the form to support the mold and then filled with resin-bonded sand. After the mold hardens, the pieces are disassembled and the original object is removed, leaving a hollow space in the middle. The resin sand may then be carved to form channels that will allow the molten metal to flow into the mold. Vents cut in the top release gases and prevent bubbles. The mold pieces are then banded back together. Molds are also made using an adaptation of the ancient lost wax method. The original form is made from wax and includes wax sprues and vents that will eventually leave openings to let the metal in and vent gases out. The form is then surrounded with resin sand. After hardening, the mold is baked upside down in a kiln at about 360 degrees Fahrenheit to melt out the wax and leave a cavity. When the molds are completed, they are ready for the pour, an event where a large number of works are cast from prepared molds. At an iron pour, a cupola furnace heats the iron chips to 3,000 degrees. Today, artists are able to recycle cast iron objects, such as radiators, manhole covers, and old bathtubs, to melt in the furnace. The cupola furnace is a cylinder of steel lined with insulation. It is open on the top where the iron is added and has a tap hole at the bottom. The tap hole is closed with a clay plug called a bot that is removed every 10 to 20 minutes to release the molten iron into the ladle. The ladle then adds the iron to the molds. Iron pours are typically done outdoors or in well-ventilated areas because of safety concerns. Protective gloves, suits, and respirators are always worn. Bronze casting is similar to working with iron, except that the metal is liquefied in a crucible in a gas-fired furnace. The molten bronze is poured directly from the crucible into the molds. Once the metal is hardened and cooled, the mold is broken apart to reveal the artwork. This is called waste mold casting because the mold is destroyed in the process. After liberating the sculpture from the mold, it must be cleaned and have the sprues and vents cut off. The marks remaining from these cuts must then be smoothed to match the surface of the sculpture. This process is called chasing and is the subtractive aspect of casting. After the sculpture is cleaned, the artist may then add a patina, a chemical process that changes the surface color of the metal. Artists also fabricate metal sculpture using techniques such as welding and forging. In constructed head number 2, Nam Gabo uses sheet metal that has been cut and welded together to investigate the sense of space and form implied by the flat planes. When working with sheet metal, the sculptor first begins by creating a pattern and drawing the cut lines onto the metal. The metal is then cut using a torch. The edges of the pieces are then smoothed using a metal wheel grinder. Sheet metal can be bent, formed, or manipulated to the final shape using a variety of tools. The final assembly takes place using an arc welder. This fabrication process joins the metal by melting the pieces where they connect and adding a filler material to form a strong joint across the seam. Special protective clothing along with a welding mask must be worn for safety reasons. The Statue of Liberty was constructed using a welded steel armature with a sheet metal copper skin hammered into shape. This complex additive process enabled the sculptor to create a 151-foot sculpture that could be constructed in France and shipped to America in pieces to be reassembled on site. Metal casting, fabrication, and construction are exciting and dramatic processes. They combine the flexibility of the additive sculpture process with the durability of metal to create works of art that have the potential to last for centuries.